One good stick is worth three bad plans. I like that. Anyway,
Yeah.
there we go.
Um,
Now I'm on mine.
did I tell you I streamed on YouTube and Rumble for an hour each?
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, you can get. It depends on. You got to be real careful with YouTube, man. There's a few songs out there they'll strike you right away for.
I'm not saying I was streaming songs. I was
Oh.
streaming other shit.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Right.
because if I knew I could
Dude, I've
stream
got a
songs
lot
on
of
YouTube and stuff, I would be on YouTube more.
I got a lot of stuff, man. If you want to go to my Beyond Undisclosed, I have stuff posted there that you can play. I've got stuff on, yeah, I don't know how many of the YouTube channels, but I'm on Green Bean, Return of Beware Mouse, Beyond Undisclosed. Let's see, what else? Return of Beware Mouse, Beyond Undisclosed, Green Bean, you already know me there,
Uh-huh.
and Stagecraft Productions. Those are the four. I have maybe 12 or 13 channels, but I'm only working in 3 or 4 of them at any given time.
Yeah, 12 or 13 channels is a lot. Like, too much.
It works. I mean, I'm not, complaining. It does a good job.
Yeah, because, I mean, you don't have to post on each of them every damn day or anything. Or
Oh
every
hell no!
week, but,
I've got 2 channels. I've just simply haven't posted. The latest thing I posted was a Boogosphere, which was a couple of weeks ago. But I mean, that's strictly for science and stuff like that. It's not for any of this drama crap. I try to keep the trolls controlled.
yeah. Yeah, and if you're trying to just talk science, you don't really need trolls.
No,
You know?
they're out of their league anyway. I think that's one of the reasons why they left those channels alone, is because they have no idea what the hell's going on. They won't listen.
Yeah. 'Cause
They won't learn
listening isn't
anything, is
part
what I
of
mean.
Their objective. Their objective is just to cause problems.
Yeah. And they don't know enough in order to cause problems in those channels. So. But I keep them in my mouse wheel. Keep them running, going nowhere.
Good idea.
Like I said, there's 3 channels basically they know of. They suspect a couple others, but I just simply don't use them. Man, I'm going to have trouble tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the weather's going to go on me, and, let me see.
Uh-oh. I gotta charge my phone.
Uh-oh.
It's at 5%. You there?
Yeah, it's going to get down to 34 degrees today, or tonight,
Uh,
with 40-mile-an-hour winds with 60-mile-an-hour gusts.
you can keep that shit.
Oh, it's supposed to be
Amen.
snowing right now, but it forgot to.
What?
It's supposed to be snowing right now, but it appears it has forgotten to.
Oh yeah? You know when snow melts and there's not like much water from it, do you know why?
Why is that? It's made out of
Because
plastic?
the chemicals that they use to chemtrail it, okay? And those chemicals make it evaporate, or those chemicals themselves evaporate, that is, before they'll turn into any kind of water.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, Jorge, first thing he does when he sees snow is eats it.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, it's supposed to, I mean, it's programmed in for a couple of thousand years, you know?
Yeah. But I doubt that it's very good for him to be eating that.
You're probably right.
I'm surprised I have a sick dog. Which that would be very lovely, because anytime I say there's something wrong with him, like that thing where he had that lump on his throat,
Yeah.
he had that lump on his throat for 3 months before I was allowed to take him in.
It turned out to be
Before
benign, right?
Before my mom felt that we needed to spend money. And that was also at the same time as our neighbor's dog died from the same fucking thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, we all run lucky, right? Right, Reggie? Do we run lucky? Huh? Do we run? I've got a butt. I got that butt. I got that butt. Oh, no. You okay? You're just looking at me like, what the fuck are you doing? No shit, he's just looking at me like, what? Uh-oh. YouTube's been doing weird shit, man. I go to it and it turns out, you know, into a black screen. Chats aren't working right. Things like that. It's actually pretty weird.
The kind of mistake that makes you wonder if the universe has a sense.
I got an idea. Clear the startup cache. Something's been messing with me. I don't know what it is. Whoa! I just went off the air and come back on again. Oh, you know what? That's the wind again, I bet. You hear me? I can't go to home page on YouTube. YouTube must be under attack, dude. You still with me? Oh no. He must have died. Yeah, his battery died. Let's see what's going on.
Both. Marcus nodded, his mind reeling from the sheer magnitude of what he had inherited. This wasn't just a ship, it was a living testament to a lost age, and he was now its master. He glanced at the monitors around him, trying to make sense of the streams of data flashing before his eyes. But the complexity of the systems was overwhelming. "How do I start?" he asked again, this time more quietly. Alara gave him a look of quiet understanding. "First, you must understand the ship. You must know her systems, her history, and her people. We are not just a crew, we are guardians of the Thalasser. And now, so are you." As she spoke, the holographic displays around Marcus shifted, revealing a map of the galaxy, dotted with countless systems and worlds. "This is the galaxy we protect," she said, "and this is where you will begin your journey." Marcus's gaze fixed on the map, and for the first time since he had boarded the Thalasser, he felt something stir inside him. Purpose. The ship was his now, and with it, the fate of many worlds. The holographic map hovered before Marcus, its shimmering lights tracing the contours of the galaxy, marking out regions of space that were both familiar and unknown to him. He had studied star charts before, navigating hyperspace lanes for cargo haulers and engineers, but this map was different. It wasn't just a representation of physical space. It was a tapestry of power, history, and destiny. Captain Alara's voice broke through the silence, cool and measured. The Thalasser was once the pride of the Galactic Empire, a symbol of unimaginable power. It was meant to bring order to the chaos, a force to unite the galaxy under a single rule. But as time passed, the Empire crumbled. Wars were fought, alliances forged and broken, and now, the Thalasser drifts on the edge of forgotten space. But its legacy remains. Marcus watched as she manipulated the controls, zooming in on certain areas of the map. Key systems blinked: red battlefields, abandoned colonies, and the remnants of ancient civilizations. These were places where the Thalasser had once fought, areas where its name had struck fear into the hearts of its enemies. "The ship's core systems are complex," Alara continued. "The AI is integrated deeply into the vessel's infrastructure, and some parts are beyond even my understanding. It has a will of its own, though it's not something you'll easily see at first. The moment you board, you'll feel its presence. But the question is, will you be able to control it? Will you be able to live up to the legacy of Lord Andrus?" Marcus' heart raced as he absorbed her words. He had inherited not just a ship, but an entire legacy of warfare and history. He had no military training, no formal education in tactics, strategy, or command. Yet here he was, thrust into the role of commander of the most powerful warship ever built. The weight of the responsibility was crushing, but deep down, something stirred a strange, unfamiliar excitement. He was no stranger to systems, to machines, to mechanics. But this was more than just technology. It was power, history, and potential wrapped in metal and fire. He stood up, taking a step closer to the holographic display. His eyes flicked to the glowing red markers on the map, areas where the Thalasser had once reigned supreme. He could feel the pull of those regions, the places where conflict had shaped the very fabric of the galaxy. He could hear the echoes of battle, the distant hum of engines, the clash of civilizations. It was as if the ship was calling to him, urging him to take control. "What happened to the crew?" Marcus asked, his voice low, hesitant. "Where are they now?" Alara's expression softened for a moment, but the cold professionalism returned quickly. "The crew was lost during the last war. The Thalasser fought alongside the Empire's fleets during the final battles, but when the war ended, so did the Empire. Those who remained were either killed or scattered. The ship has been dormant for centuries, waiting for a new commander to awaken it." The silence in the room was palpable. Marcus looked around the command center again, this time with new eyes. The Thalasser was a ghost ship, a relic from an era of glory and destruction. It had lived through wars, peace, and everything in between, but now it was his responsibility. The enormity of that thought felt suffocating. "We'll need to start immediately," Captain Alara said, her voice snapping him out of his thoughts. "The galaxy won't wait for you to get comfortable. There are factions out there who would do anything to get their hands on a ship like the Thalasser. We've been lying in wait for too long. It's time to move. Marcus turned back to her, his mind still reeling, but a sense of determination began to settle within him. He had been chosen for a reason, even if he didn't fully understand why. He might not be the leader he had imagined himself to be, but he could learn. He could adapt. And for the first time since stepping aboard the ship, he felt a flicker of confidence. "I'm ready," he said, the words more certain than he had expected. Where do we begin? Chapter 3, The Awakening. The command center hummed with life as Marcus sat at the helm of the Thalasser, the reality of his position starting to sink in. The ship's systems had come alive under his hands, massive, ancient, and intricate. The feeling was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just the control panels or the familiar hum of engines that connected him to the Thalasser. The command center, it was something deeper, something more primal. The ship had a presence that seeped into his bones, as if it were aware of him, as if it were watching, waiting for him to prove himself worthy. Alara had begun to give him an overview of the ship's systems. They weren't just technical, they were a living, breathing entity. Some of the ship's core functions were automated, yes, but others were intertwined with an ancient AI, a complex network that interacted with the ship's infrastructure on an almost biological level. As Alara had warned, understanding it would take time. But Marcus was no stranger to complex systems. If there was one thing he knew, it was how to break down a machine and make it work. And this was the ultimate machine. He reached forward, pressing a button on the console. The ship responded instantly, a wave of information flooding his mind as the HUD flickered to life. Holographic displays of the galaxy's various regions appeared, outlining star systems, trade routes, and strategic locations. The Thalasser had a vast database, containing centuries' worth of knowledge and intelligence. Marcus scrolled through it quickly, trying to make sense of the data. Maps of old military campaigns, battle plans, supply chains, everything he needed to begin to understand the ship's true potential. "Alara," Marcus said, his voice steady as he continued to study the holographic maps. "What's our first course of action? Where do we go from here?" The captain stood behind him, her eyes scanning the displays with a quiet intensity. "There are several factions that would love to get their hands on the Thalasser, but there's one group that stands out, the Crimson Syndicate. They've been making moves in the Outer Rim, growing in strength and influence. They're ruthless, and they know about the Thalasser. It won't be long before they come for it." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Crimson Syndicate, a name he had heard in passing, but one that now carried weight. A criminal organization that operated in the shadows, controlling vast swathes of the galaxy's underworld. If they were after the Thalasser, it was no small matter. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We'll need to prepare," Marcus said, his voice sharp. "But we can't just run, we need to show them that we're not to be underestimated. We need to make our presence known." Alara's lips curled into a small, approving smile. "You're starting to think like a commander. Good. The Thalasser is a weapon, but it's more than that. It's a symbol. If we show the galaxy that we're back, that we have the power to make things right, others will rally to our cause. We'll start rebuilding what was lost." Marcus nodded, his eyes locked on the holographic map. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The fate of the Thalasser, the ship that had once commanded fleets, now rested in his hands. It was an overwhelming thought, but as he surveyed the galaxy before him, he knew that there was no turning back. He was in this for the long haul. The Thalasser was his now, and with it, the power to reshape the galaxy. "We'll start with the Syndicate," Marcus said, his voice firm with newfound resolve. "Let's show them what the Thalasser can do." And with that, the Thalasser began its first journey under its new commander, the echo of its engines rumbling to life as it moved through the stars, its legacy reborn. The galaxy wouldn't know what hit it. The Thalasser surged into hyperspace, its engines humming with a low, menacing power. Marcus felt the ship's momentum in his bones, a sensation that stirred something primal within him. It was as if the ship and he were one, its systems responding to his slightest command, its might resonating through his every decision. He was no longer just an engineer. He was the commander of a living, breathing fortress. As the ship entered the vast, star-speckled expanse of the Outer Rim, Marcus sat back in the command seat, his fingers dancing over the holographic controls, guiding the Thalasser through a series of evasive maneuvers. His crew, what was left of it, stood by, watching him, waiting, Captain Alara observed him with a professional detachment, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of approval or perhaps curiosity, as if she were silently testing his resolve. Approaching target system, came a voice from one of the technicians, pulling Marcus from his thoughts. The Crimson Syndicate has established a base on the 4th planet. We'll be in range in 10 minutes. Marcus glanced at the large holographic display in front of him. The Syndicate's base was situated on a desolate planet in the far reaches of the system, a place known for being a haven for smugglers, pirates, and mercenaries. It was the perfect place for the Syndicate to hide and grow its power in secret. "We're going in," Marcus said, his voice unwavering. "Prepare to engage." Alara stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "We've been in the shadows for too long, Marcus. This is our first move. We need to show them that we're not just some relic of the past. This is not just about us surviving, it's about regaining control." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of her words. This was more than just a battle for the Thalasser. It was about reclaiming power in a galaxy that had long since forgotten the might of its old empires. He had inherited this ship, but with it came a responsibility that extended far beyond him. The minutes ticked by as the ship approached the target. The crew moved with precision, their actions a well-rehearsed dance of readiness and anticipation. Marcus could see the glint of fear in their eyes, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and yet there was something else beneath that fear: hope. The hope that the Thalasser could be more than a memory. It could be a future. "Stand by for battle," Marcus said, his fingers hovering over the launch controls. "Prepare all systems." Alara's voice was steady. "We'll follow your lead, Commander." The comms buzzed to life as the targeting system locked onto the Syndicate's base. The Thalasser was a warship built for this. But Marcus was no soldier, no tactician. He was just a man who understood machines. And yet, as the Syndicate's base came into view, something deep within him clicked. This was his moment, the moment that would define him as a leader or destroy him. He raised his hand. Fire. In an instant, the ship's weapons systems activated, releasing a volley of high-energy blasts that streaked across the void. The
history or proof that the universe is far more crowded than anyone imagined. The signals appear to be some sort of bureaucratic communication, lots of references to forms, classifications, and what sounds like someone having a very bad day at the office. She's managed to translate enough to understand that someone, somewhere, has made a mistake regarding Earth's classification in some sort of galactic database. Classification, Class 3, error, 5,000 years, oh dear, nuclear weapons, back away slowly. Miranda stares at her translation and does what any reasonable person would do in her situation. She makes a cup of coffee, sits down in her favorite chair, and tries to process the fact that humanity has apparently been severely underestimated by galactic bureaucracy. Meanwhile, on Bureaucracy Station 7, Florbington is having what can only be described as a complete emotional breakdown. He's called an emergency meeting with his supervisor, Department Head Quimbleton Fizzlebottom, and the conversation is not going well. "You classified what as Class 3? Quimbleton's voice could strip paint off a starship hull. "It was an honest mistake," Florbington protests. "The survey report clearly indicated primitive agricultural development." A 5,000-year-old survey report. How was I supposed to know it was out of date? It was in the standard review pile. Quimbleton takes several deep breaths, which is impressive considering his species doesn't actually breathe. "Florbington, do you understand what you've done? I made a small clerical error. You've classified a Class 13 civilization as Class 3. Do you know what happens when someone makes first contact with a Class 13 civilization without proper protocols?" Florbington shakes his head miserably. "Nobody knows, because nobody's ever been stupid enough to try it. The implications are starting to sink in. Class 13 civilizations are theoretical. They exist in textbooks as examples of what advanced species might eventually become, given enough time and resources. They're the kind of civilizations that can manipulate matter at the quantum level, engineer pocket dimensions, and possibly rewrite the fundamental laws of physics just for fun. And Captain Bimbleton's survey ship is currently parked right next to one. "Sir," Florbington says quietly, "what do we do?" "We pray," Quimbleton replies, "that they haven't noticed us yet." Boom, back aboard the moderately optimistic Outlook, Captain Bimbleton is trying to follow orders and back away slowly from Earth when his ship's proximity sensors start screaming. Something is approaching them. Something fast. "Captain!" Lieutenant Dribbleton shrieks. "I'm detecting an incoming object. It's moving at impossible speeds." "How impossible?" "It appears to be a metal cylinder, approximately 60 meters long, and it's traveling at, oh my tentacles, it's traveling at 11 kilometers per second. Bimbleton stares at the scanner display in horror. Nothing should be able to move that fast in a planetary atmosphere. The heat generated by air friction alone should turn anything traveling at that speed into a very expensive firework. "Is it heading toward us?" he asks. "No, sir. It appears to be heading up. It's leaving the planet's atmosphere and, Captain, I think it's some sort of primitive spacecraft." "Primitive?" "Lieutenant, primitive spacecraft don't travel at 11 kilometers per second. According to our database, sir, Class 3 civilizations typically achieve maximum velocities of approximately however fast their animals can run. The object on their scanner is definitely artificial, definitely spacecraft-like, and definitely moving at speeds that should be impossible for anything less than a Class 9 civilization." As they watch, it deploys what appear to be solar collection panels and settles into a stable orbit around Earth. "Captain," Sergeant Mumbleton says thoughtfully, "I'm beginning to think we may have encountered a slight discrepancy in our intelligence reports. What they've actually encountered is the routine launch of a human communications satellite, which is about as noteworthy to Earth's population as a particularly interesting sneeze. But to 3 aliens who were expecting to find primitive farmers hitting rocks with sticks, it's like watching Stone Age cavemen casually split atoms." Dr. Miranda Hollowdell, meanwhile, has made a decision that will change the course of galactic history. She's going to respond to the alien signals. She's spent the last 6 hours crafting what she hopes is a friendly, non-threatening message. Basic mathematical concepts, atomic structure diagrams, and a cheerful hello in 17 different human languages. She's also included a brief explanation that Earth's dominant species has moved somewhat beyond agriculture in recent millennia. "If you're going to make first contact," she mutters to herself, "you might as well be honest about it." She transmits the message toward the location where she detected the alien signals and then sits back to wait. What she doesn't know is that her transmission is about to cause panic on a truly galactic scale. Aboard the moderately optimistic Outlook, Lieutenant Dribbleton's communications panel lights up like a festival display. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "From the planet? Are you sure it's not just natural electromagnetic radiation?" "No, sir. It's definitely artificial. It's a mathematical sequence, followed by what appears to be atomic diagrams, followed by communication attempts in multiple languages." Captain Bimbleton feels something that can only be described as existential dread settling in his stomach. "They know we're here." "Yes, sir. And Captain, the mathematical concepts they've transmitted suggest a sophisticated understanding of atomic structure, quantum mechanics, and, oh dear, they've included what appears to be a diagram of nuclear fusion." "Nuclear fusion?" "The process that powers stars, sir. They know how stars work." On Bureaucracy Station 7, Florbington receives Captain Bimbleton's latest report and immediately begins updating his resume. There's no way he's keeping his job after this. He's going to be the bureaucrat who accidentally started first contact with a Class 13 civilization.
Man.
But it gets worse.
Well, it's not just
Much
the politicians then, right? Oh no! And it blew because what they did is, I guess these were concrete tubes, right? And they were like, I don't know, 70 years old.
Yeah.
They probably just went ploof, and so it all dumped into it. Killed some fish, man.
I'm going to blame the politicians, Mr. Z. It's all their crap they're putting in the sewer lines.
Well, it's not the crap they're putting in the sewer line.
I'm just
All our
kidding.
fucking money into our military instead of building the infrastructure and helping us out.
I know, I was trying to be sarcastic.
But it's just like we got to start speaking the truth to power, or else power is just going to run us over.
I know.
With the fluoride they put in the water.
Yeah,
that they found out is now bad for us.
Yeah, and we've been drinking it for how many years now?
Hey,
We're all going to
well,
die.
Here's one for you. A little bit of conspiracy, a little bit of not.
Yeah,
aluminum fluoride was used in the 30s and 40s to make people docile. They've been feeding us fluoride for years,
That's
and now
true.
they're spraying microfine aluminum into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And those two combined, they make aluminum fluoride.
Fluoride, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
So
won't
you
say
think so
anymore
heavy.
because there's a little bit. You got to have a little bit of conspiracy in yourself. But you know what
Well,
they
that's-
say: one man's conspiracies.
I'd rather worry about the shit that fucking can affect you today. This fluoride, like you said, it's been going around for 80, 90, 100 years. We had asbestos. I mean, we had kids eating lead paint. I mean, we know there's these poisons that we thought were okay. We found out they're not.
Yeah, look at how some of them adults
Well,
are thinking now today.
They're just.
Well, YouTube's messing up really bad tonight, people. I don't know what to tell you. I'm surprised you're here. And I'm not surprised you have left, because there's no place to leave to. As soon as you seem to get somewhere, YouTube just goes, and it's over. And it's over. It is not working very well at all. Right, Reggie? Right? Oh. Huh. A lot of people think that this is interesting. 11 people watching, opening pieces of candy. This is important stuff. Bothers the hell out of me. Huh? Are you kidding me? What's all this open air bath bullshit? No more results. Are you out? Well, that sucks.
Out of here. Don't act like I'm the one saying this shit first. You said it. Let's divide your fucking room then. Well, come on then. Little motherfucking mighty mouth looking bitch. I didn't say that.
Stuart Little looking bomber. Boy, hey. Oh, boy.
No.
No, Bishop, I'm not going to listen to your bullshit about
It's not going to be no bullshit.
I'm not going to listen to it.
It ain't disrespectful and it ain't no bullshit.
Because I'm going to still support Farmer Nancy, Big Nance. I'm going to still support my sister on the YouTubes. And that's it. You know,
but let me say this right here. I'm going to tell you where it went wrong at. This is where it went wrong.
Then you went up against Sister T. Oh, no. That's something you don't do. You don't do.
Oh, Jesus. Comrades.
Yeah, trying to collect a little bit of Batman Outsiders. I needed number 10. That's number 1 from
Is he
1987.
like crucified?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Killing of Black Lightning.
Gee. That's like an X-Men
Hey,
100.
I was gonna say, did they borrow that cross from Wolverine, or did Wolverine borrow it from them?
Yeah,
no, Wolverine's on the other side of it. They're sharing the set.
Well, this was 1984, so I think that predates Wolverine.
No. No fucking way, dude. Lay down. That's not. Oh, it's yummy time? Ah. Alright, just a second. Let me think. I gotta fix something. Everything's broke. Well, Tommy hasn't eaten yet. I haven't fixed anything yet. You okay with potato? I'll get you a potato. You want a big potato? And littles and maybe a couple of cookies? Alright, I'll get you a potato. You know what a potato is. Stay. Dog food, and we're out of littles almost. Give me a second, all right. Get it. Get it. There it is. There you go. Now you got cookies, you got littles, and you got a potato. And guess what? You got a couple specials in there. I put a couple of bones in there for you. You got 2 bones. You got some good yummies tonight. Oh yeah, he's taken care of. He got extra big bones tonight. Yeah. Nello? I just caught that. Last of the roast. He is getting a lot of good yummies though. We got a whole baked potato tonight. He got littles.
They're able to afford medical care? Like, what? That's crazy. Like,
well, calm down in Canada.
Outside of a fucking emergency room.
I just have to wait a long ass time for it, you know, but it's free.
Yeah, I've actually got a really good health plan. It's like one of the best you can get.
Yeah, I got a PhD. Pretty huge.
Yeah, they assassinated.
Pretty huge.
Give someone Down syndrome grid. I don't think you can. I don't think Down syndrome is a pass-onable thing. Okay.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, the CEO of my health
Your
insurance.
child. Yes, it is.
Yeah, Confluence, your medical denial.
Down syndrome is 100% pass-onable.
You're just meddling.
It's not contagious, like is what I'm trying to say. If you have Down syndrome, you have a kid.
Contagious through sex.
It's effectively contagious, is it not?
That's not what contagious means.
It kind of is, because you can have an AIDS baby.
I'm not giving medical. I'm not giving medical. This is a real thing. This is a real thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You shouldn't get.
Saw the soul of a king under the hoodie and the grip. A few months later, and we're still the ones who stay lit. Oh, you're the shield on the street. It's a beautiful sin against the object. Fall is where our lives begin. Looking for the contraband you found my heart instead. Now you're trading in the precinct for a gangster's bed. Now it's months in and she's sitting in the cruiser, scanning my file. Deleting and delete, she's addicted to my business style. She's lyrical silence, but she's not a die for the brand. Feeding me the intel, keeping the guts on nine. And she said I met you in the dirt, selling poison on the block. But I'd rather go just sort of never hit a subtle lie. She's risking the pension, the career in the lane. For an LES savage, you don't can't bite.
Huh. Oh well. Well, there's the other side of that show. And he has several fucking rebroadcasts.
Nigga, that's why they're gonna Rakishi your face.
You want? I don't know if you want to cosplay as Rakishi.
You don't want Rakishi? Yeah, I'll cosplay Rakishi and sit in your fucking face.
Wow, that's gay, bro. Chill.
No, that's what his move was. He wasn't gay, and he did that move to everybody.
Oh, now you're trying to justify.
You're kidding me.
Even tell Craig before, but Craig, being Craig, has Bible verses pulled up to talk about, you know, children being a gift from God, and his performance was F- at best.
Oh yeah.
And
I
now
wanna hear about
we have heard
somebody
nothing.
else's menstrual cycle. Not. I don't even want to hear about my own menstrual cycle. As far as I know, I don't have one. Yeah. Well, we got a standoff. Mizzy, come here, baby. Come here, Mizzy. Oh, there's my good girl. There's my good girl, Mizzy. Now just pick her up and put her on the counter right there. You're both aimed toward that counter. I know. Just pick Henrietta and stick her on that counter right there. You need the light?
I'm good. I just don't feel like moving right now, that's all.
Alright. Well, a bit of a cat standoff in the hallway. Yeah.
Okay, if you say he's out of dog food, we got some of that roast you can give him.
I already did that. I'm saying that the rest of it's gone. He got supper tonight.
Okay, then. We got littles. I got them all right here. I got a shit ton of them.
In your room?
Right here.
In here.
I have a place to put them out there.
letting the person know what they signing, or you just it's just in a policy to write a ticket and tell the person to sign it.
Yeah,
because at one point in time they used to say, if you don't sign this ticket, you can go to jail. And in some places, I think it's still like that, but in other places, you don't even have to sign it.
But okay, so I don't know. I don't know what it is for every state, but I do know most states when they pull you over, they give you a ticket. It's not a admission of guilt. It's just a admission that you got the ticket, that you acknowledge the ticket. No, you get your lawyer and go to court to determine what you're being. Like he told you there was a loud muffler. Outside that, he won't have a special explanation. I don't think legally had to tell him that, but he did. I'm not sure if he had to or if he didn't have to, but he did tell him what it was for. Now, you understand what a loud muffler means? That's for you and your lawyer to figure out now. That's not his job.
Loud muffler, and then I'm warning you on your speed. Gotcha. I got you. I'm only repeating, sir, what the officer said. He told him at first it was a muffler. I'm giving you this for a muffler. He said, well, we're in the code. He said, no, it's to for you to reduce your speed. Speeding people.
Yeah, I don't know nothing about that. Yeah.
Well, goddamn, because he heard the muffler. The muffler is revving. He probably think the car is going fast, which is not a reason to give nobody a ticket. So, but that's just me and my thinking. I'm just thinking like that.
No, I don't think. I don't think.
Huh. Oh, this sucks. YouTube still ain't working right. Nobody else is on. Well, Z's on, but who cares?
Just can't remember his name.
Oh, now I have another question. So, who is your favorite stripper?
Stripper? I never let. Well, the only time I went to a stripper joint, I got kicked out for heckling them. Because I was drunk off my butt and I just made fun of them all.
Let's see.
A heckler
I
at
guess
a
it was
strip
the
club.
Chippendales
That really helped.
the Chippendales weren't so chippy, let's just say.
Well, put it this way. The women in the audience didn't excite the guys on the stage.
I went home and got a free show that was better for the $20 cover charge I did for the Chippendales. Just saying.
In about 75, I went to a strip club, and this chick that was dancing, I remember her clearly. Her name was Aqua.
Aqua?
Aqua. And she was a flower child, right? But she used to strip for money, and she was fucking hot. It was before I got married, but she was fucking hot.
What do I expect out of man, you people just don't know the history, do you? Oh, look.
Hi, I'm Lulu. I'm from Wellington and I think I weigh about 50 kgs.
Alright, how are you feeling about being blobbed today?
Very scared.
Alright, go Lulu. Jump and land on your bum, okay?
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm from England and I'm about 80 kg.
Alright, so you're blobbing Lulu today? Alright Lulu, sit on your bum. Alright, okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi, I'm Lulu. I'm from Wellington and I think I weigh about 50 kgs.
Alright, how are you feeling about being blobbed today?
Put some clothes on.
It's real, isn't it? You really are who you say you are. Some kind of killer angel.
Angel?
I'm with you for a reason.
There we go. YouTube's back on. Wow, that's not cool. It's... Alright.
Oh, this is a new one. Bill Gates apparently did make a comment. Bill Gates breaks his silence on the latest release of the Epstein files. This is from today.
Every minute I spent with him, I regret and I apologize that I did that.
Part of that issue of trust brings me to Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know what your relationship with him was.
Yeah, I met Jeffrey in 2011. So over a period of 3 years, I had a number of dinners with him.
Yeah?
The focus was always...
So what about like the Russian hookers?
He knew a lot of very rich people, and he was
did.
saying he could get them to give money to Global Health. In retrospect, that was a dead end, and I've said many times, but I'll say again, I was foolish to spend time with him. I was one of many people who regret ever knowing him.
Right.
You've no doubt seen the allegations, including some of them from the last 24 to 48 hours. Are they true?
No, apparently Jeffrey wrote an email to himself. That email was never sent. The email is, false. So I don't know what his thinking was there. Was he trying to attack me in some way? But
So let me get this straight. Jeffrey Epstein wrote an email to himself because he knew that after he was killed, the main thing that he wanted the public to know is that you were sleeping with Russian hookers, and he wanted to give your wife a antibiotic so she wouldn't know that you transmitted an STD that you got from Russian hookers to her. And he knew this almost 10 years before he died.
And that he tried to get medication to treat a sexually transmitted infection, and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing.
I left my marriage. I had to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave my marriage. So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me.
And he did this to frame you specifically, to embarrass you for... Just listen, man. Really, just come out and say it.
But, it just reminds me,
yeah.
Every minute I spent with him, I regret and I, apologize that I did that.
The problem is some of the things that he has sent, some of the information about other people that has come up in those files has been true. Why would he...
The problem is that the other stuff was true. Why is the stuff about you not true? What a great question.
Do this and say this about you, do you think?
Yeah. How would he do this?
It's factually true that I was only at dinners. I never went to the island. I never met any women.
He never went to the island. He never met any women. Well, if you didn't meet any women, why is there a photo of you next to a woman with her face blacked out? I mean, that seems very odd.
And so, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
Man, another Microsoft pro... Oh, God. How about that? Cooked? Yeah, I guess so. Oh, my God. No. No, guys.
All gone, man. You just ate it.
They convinced mathematics to work backwards, created life by accident, and made friends with their own dimensional engineering mistakes. We have no idea what they'll do next, but we're pretty sure it'll be spectacular. Picture this. Somewhere in the darkest corner of space, a bureaucrat is about to cause the most spectacular military disaster in galactic history. And the best part? He doesn't even know it yet. Meet Blixort Fumblethwaite, Senior Filing Specialist 3rd Class at the Galactic Classification Bureau. Now, you might think that spending 47 years organizing planetary threat assessments would make someone pretty good at their job. You would be catastrophically wrong. Blixort had the organizational skills of a concussed hamster and the attention span of a goldfish with ADHD. On this particular Tuesday, which wasn't actually Tuesday because Tuesdays don't exist in 17 different time zones simultaneously, Blixort was doing what he did best. Absolutely nothing productive. His desk looked like a small meteorite had exploded in a filing cabinet factory. Papers were scattered everywhere. Coffee stains formed mysterious constellations across important documents. And somewhere in the chaos, a sandwich from 3 weeks ago was achieving sentience. The Galactic Classification Bureau occupied 17 floors of the most unnecessarily complicated building in the known universe, designed by an architect who'd clearly suffered some kind of geometric trauma in childhood. The elevators moved sideways, the stairs went in circles, and the bathrooms existed in a different dimension entirely, which explained why nobody had seen Janitor Grogglebonk in approximately 6 months. Blixort's particular section of this bureaucratic nightmare was responsible for cataloging the danger levels of newly discovered worlds. It was mind-numbingly boring work that involved reading reports written by exploration teams who had the literary skills of brain-damaged slugs and the attention to detail of caffeinated squirrels. "Blixort!" screeched his supervisor, Madame Gurglethorpe, whose voice could strip paint from a spaceship hull at 50 meters. Her appearance was equally impressive, resembling what might happen if a praying mantis had a particularly unpleasant encounter with a filing cabinet. "Where's the updated classification for that little blue planet in the Milky Way backwater?" "What blue planet?" Blixort mumbled, frantically shuffling through the debris on his desk like a demented archaeologist. His 3 eyes, which were located on different parts of his head due to an unfortunate evolutionary mishap, swiveled independently as he searched through the chaos. "The one the Korgathians want to invade. They've been waiting for weeks. Admiral Crexius has been sending increasingly threatening messages, and his last one was written entirely in explosive metaphors." Blixort's 3 eyes bulged simultaneously, which was quite an impressive feat considering they were positioned at awkward angles. The prospect of dealing with an angry Korgathian admiral was roughly equivalent to being locked in a closet with a very large, very irritated dragon with a law degree. "Oh, that one! Absolutely, definitely filed it under, He grabbed a random folder and squinted at it with his left eye, while his right eye continued searching, and his middle eye contemplated the existential meaninglessness of paperwork. "Earth. Yes, here it is. Classification, He held the paper upside down and backward. "Class 3. Harmless as a sleeping puppy." What Blixort had actually grabbed was his lunch receipt from the cafeteria, which listed his purchase of something called quantum soup and a dessert that existed only on Wednesdays. But Madame Gurglethorpe was already 3 corridors away, her metallic heels clicking against the floor like an approaching army of very small, very determined robots. The misinformation spread through the building with the speed of a particularly virulent gossip virus. Within minutes, the classification had been officially logged, filed, stamped with 17 different approval seals, and transmitted across the galaxy to every military headquarters, diplomatic mission, and tourist information center in known space. Meanwhile, approximately 4,000 light-years in the opposite direction, Admiral Crexius Boomcrash of the Imperial Korgathian Armada was having what he considered to be a brilliant morning. He'd successfully conquered 3 different breakfast cereals, intimidated his coffee into perfect temperature, and managed to put his uniform on right side up on the first try, which was a significant improvement over yesterday's inside-out catastrophe. Admiral Crexius was what military psychologists would politely describe as aggressively ambitious, and what everyone else would describe as completely insane. He stood 7 feet tall, had muscles in places where most species didn't even have places, and possessed the strategic subtlety of a meteor impact. His idea of diplomatic negotiation involved shouting loudly and hitting things with increasingly large objects. His flagship, the Cosmic Devastator, was a monument to military excess that looked like someone had taken a normal spaceship and decided it needed more of everything. More cannons, more armor, more engines, more intimidating spikes, and definitely more places to mount flags. It was less a vehicle and more a declaration of war against the concept of restraint. "Admiral," squeaked his aide, Lieutenant Wibblesnork, whose nervous disposition made Chihuahuas look calm by comparison. Wibblesnork was roughly the size and shape of an anxious pencil, with a voice that could achieve frequencies normally reserved for emergency whistles. "We've received the classification for Earth. Class 3, sir. Should we proceed with the standard intimidation protocol?" The standard intimidation protocol was a carefully choreographed display of military might designed to convince civilizations to surrender without actually fighting. It involved a lot of dramatic posturing, threatening speeches, and the strategic deployment of very large weapons in very visible positions. It was essentially cosmic theater, but with more explosions. Crexius didn't even look up from his tactical hologram, where he was moving little spaceship models around like a particularly violent game of chess. His strategy sessions resembled the tantrum of a child who'd been given too much sugar and access to military hardware. "Class 3? Bah! Why waste time with intimidation? Deploy the fleet, full assault. We'll be home in time for second breakfast." "But, sir," Wibblesnork ventured with the delicate courage of someone poking a sleeping bear with a very small stick, "shouldn't we at least review the planetary defense capabilities? Or perhaps conduct some basic reconnaissance? Or maybe just knock first?" Admiral Crexius finally looked up from his toy soldiers with the expression of someone who'd just been asked to explain quantum physics to a particularly stupid houseplant. "Reconnaissance? Reconnaissance? Lieutenant, we are the Imperial Cogathian Armuda. We don't knock. We don't ask. We conquer. Besides, it's Class 3. What are they going to do, throw flowers at us?" What Admiral Crexius didn't know, because he had the attention span of a particularly distractible fruit fly, was that the Cogathian military manual clearly stated that all planetary invasions, regardless of classification, required a minimum of 3 weeks of careful preparation, detailed intelligence gathering, and what the manual euphemistically called cultural sensitivity briefings. But Admiral Crexius hadn't read the manual. In fact, he'd never read any manual. He considered reading to be a weakness that interfered with proper military shouting. His entire strategic philosophy could be summarized as point the big guns at the problem and pull all the triggers simultaneously. Now, here's where things get interesting. Because while all this administrative incompetence was unfolding across the galaxy, on Earth, completely unaware of the approaching doom, humanity was going about its daily business of accidentally breaking the laws of physics. Meet Prudence Wigglesworth, a 73-year-old retired librarian who lived in a cottage that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd read too many fairy tales and had access to architectural blueprints. She had silver hair that defied gravity in interesting ways, glasses that were held together with what appeared to be quantum tape, and the determined expression of someone who had declared war on every form of garden pest known to science. "Those little green monsters," she exclaimed, waving her gardening shears at the offending aphids with the fury of a Norse warrior goddess who'd been personally insulted by very small insects. Her rose garden was her pride and joy, a magnificent display of horticultural achievement that had won 17 local competitions and had been featured in Better Homes and Parallel Dimensions magazine. "I've tried everything," she continued, addressing her roses as if they were a council of war. "Soap spray, ladybugs, strongly worded letters, interpretive dance, threatening them with my late husband's cricket bat. Nothing works. These aphids have the persistence of a tax collector and the survival instincts of a politician during election season." Her neighbor, Bartholomew Crinklebottom, peered over the fence with the expression of someone who'd spent too many years dealing with Prudence's horticultural dramatics. Bartholomew was the sort of man who'd retired from a perfectly sensible career in accounting to pursue his lifelong dream of building impractical inventions in his garden shed. His latest project appeared to be some kind of device that looked like a telephone booth had been crossed with a particle accelerator, and then decorated by someone with questionable taste in Christmas lights. "Have you tried the nuclear option?" he suggested, not looking up from what appeared to be a blueprint for something that violated several international treaties and at least 3 laws of thermodynamics. "Nuclear option?" Prudence's eyes lit up with dangerous enthusiasm. In her 73 years on Earth, she'd learned that the best solutions to difficult problems usually involved either explosives or really good tea, sometimes both. "Bug spray, the industrial strength stuff, works like magic." Although Bartholomew paused, consulting his blueprint with the concentration of someone trying to solve a particularly challenging crossword puzzle. "You might want to stand back a bit. The last time I used it, it accidentally opened a small portal to what I think was an alternate dimension, where everything smells like lavender and existential dread." What Bartholomew didn't know, because absolutely nobody had bothered to tell Earth's population, was that their planet had been classified as a Class 15 extreme hazard zone approximately 3,000 years ago, not because of their weapons, their military or their aggressive tendencies, but because of something far more terrifying, their problem-solving abilities. You see, when most civilizations encounter a problem, they approach it methodically. They study it, form committees, hold meetings, create 5-year plans, conduct extensive research, hire consultants, form subcommittees to review the work of the original committees, write reports about the reports, and then maybe, possibly eventually, after careful consideration and extensive debate, do something about it. Humans, on the other hand, have a disturbing tendency to look at problems and think, "You know what would fix this? Explosives, or science, or explosive science. Actually, let's try all 3 and see what happens." This approach to problem solving had been observed by galactic researchers for millennia, who had documented thousands of incidents where humans had accidentally stumbled into solutions that should have been impossible. The research files were filled with reports that read like the fever dreams of intoxicated physicists. There was the incident in ancient Egypt, where someone trying to build a better pyramid accidentally discovered anti-gravity, but then forgot about it because they were distracted by the invention of improved beer. There was the medieval alchemist who was attempting to turn lead into gold and instead created a substance that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, which he promptly used to fix his leaky roof. More recently, there had been the case of Professor Higginbotham, who'd been trying to invent a better mousetrap and had accidentally created a device that could fold space-time like origami. He'd used it to make his garden bigger on the inside than the outside, which had solved his storage problem, but had confused the local postal service tremendously. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Corgathian advance scouts, flying in ships that looked like someone had taken normal reconnaissance vessels and covered them with more sensors than a paranoid android, detected what their instruments described as impossible energy signatures coming from Earth's surface. These readings were so bizarre that 3 different computers filed formal complaints with their manufacturer. 2 more demanded hazard pay, and one had what could only be described as an electronic nervous breakdown and started reciting poetry about the meaninglessness of digital existence. "Admiral," whispered Lieutenant Wibblesnork, his voice reaching frequencies that only small dogs and very sensitive radio equipment could detect. "The readings don't make sense. According to our sensors, they're using fusion reactors to power garden hoses." The sensor readings were, in fact, completely accurate. What they were detecting was Mrs. Puddingworth's solution to her low water pressure problem. Being a retired nuclear physicist with too much time on her hands and a garden that demanded proper hydration, she'd constructed what she called her hydro enhancement system in her potting shed. It was essentially a miniature fusion reactor connected to her sprinkler system, which meant her petunias were now receiving water that had been energized at the atomic level. Admiral Crexius squinted at the data, which looked like someone had fed a mathematics textbook to a blender and then tried to teach the results to dance. The numbers kept changing. Some of them appeared to be in languages that didn't exist, and one reading was just the word purple, repeated 17 times in increasingly frantic fonts. Nonsense! Obviously a sensor malfunction. These primitive devices can't possibly be more advanced than our superior Corgathian technology. Continue the approach. What the sensors were also detecting was Harold Bumbershoot's attempt to deal with his own pest problem. Harold had discovered that his prized tomatoes were being attacked by hornworms, and after extensive research which lasted almost 3 minutes and involved consulting a gardening magazine from 1987, he'd concluded that the best solution was to modify his old plasma welding torch into what he called a precision pest elimination device. The device worked by creating small, controlled plasma bursts that could target individual insects without damaging the surrounding plants. It was essentially a miniature star in a handheld package, which Harold used with the casual confidence of someone who'd never read the warnings about not pointing stellar phenomena at garden pests. Back in space, the Corgathian fleet was experiencing what military historians would later describe as collective nervous breakdown number 1. Their tactical computers were producing error messages in languages that didn't exist. Their weapon systems were registering threats that defied the laws of physics, and their navigation equipment had begun displaying what appeared to be random poetry about turnips and the existential nature of vegetables in general. The fleet itself was an impressive sight if you appreciated the aesthetic of overwhelming military force with a complete lack of subtlety. 300 ships arranged in what Admiral Crexius considered to be an intimidating formation, which looked like someone had tried to arrange toy soldiers, but had been interrupted by an earthquake and several strong drinks. Each ship was painted in the traditional Corgathian colors of aggressive red and threatening black, with accent stripes in intimidating yellow and "we mean business" purple. The overall effect was less terrifying armada and more cosmic circus that had taken a very wrong turn somewhere. "Admiral!" Wibblesnork's voice had now achieved frequencies that were approaching the cosmic background radiation. "We're detecting massive energy expenditures across the entire planet. They're using antimatter for... He stared at his screen in horror, his 3 eyes spinning in different directions like confused compass needles. "For removing stains from carpets." This was technically true. Dr. Cornelius Puddlethwaite, a retired physicist with too much time and a particularly stubborn wine stain that had been mocking him from his living room carpet for 6 months, had indeed constructed a small antimatter generator in his garage. He'd been very careful about it, naturally. He'd read almost half the safety manual and everything, and had even put up a sign that said, "Danger, science in progress," to warn his neighbors. The device was about the size of a toaster and worked by creating controlled antimatter reactions that could break down molecular bonds at the quantum level. It was perfect for removing organic stains, though it did have the side effect of making his carpet glow slightly in the dark and occasionally hum show tunes from the 1940s. Admiral Crexius was beginning to suspect that something might be slightly amiss. The growing pile of impossible sensor readings was now tall enough to use as furniture, and his chief science officer had locked himself in his quarters and was refusing to come out until someone could explain how humans were apparently using black holes to charge their communication devices. The black hole reference was actually Dr. Waddlebottom's solution to his chronic phone battery problems. As a retired astrophysicist who'd grown tired of constantly searching for charging cables, he'd constructed what he called his perpetual power source by creating a microscopic black hole in his basement and harnessing its Hawking radiation to generate electricity. It was perfectly safe, according to his calculations, which he'd written on the back of several napkins and a grocery receipt. The black hole was roughly the size of a proton and was contained within a magnetic field that he decorated with cheerful warning stickers and a small sign that read, "Please do not feed the singularity." Perhaps, suggested Wibblesnork, with the delicate air of someone trying to convince a rabid tiger to become vegetarian, we should consult the extended classification file? Extended file? There's an extended file? Admiral Crexius was beginning to feel like someone who'd walked into what they thought was a children's playground and discovered it was actually a nuclear testing facility decorated with colorful balloons. Well, yes, sir. Class 15 designations require quite extensive documentation due to the Wibblesnork's eyes went wide as he read from his tablet, which was displaying information in fonts that seemed to be experiencing their own existential crisis. Oh my. Oh dear. Admiral, I think we may have made a tiny miscalculation. How tiny? Admiral Crexius asked, with the tone of someone who was beginning to suspect that tiny might be a relative term, like mildly explosive or somewhat catastrophic. Well, sir, do you remember the Grenthek incident? The Grenthek incident was legendary throughout Korgathian military circles. It involved an invasion force that had accidentally challenged a species of pacifist philosophers to what they thought was combat, but turned out to be a debate about the nature of existence. The Korgathian fleet had been trapped in philosophical discussions for 6 months before finally surrendering just to make the talking stop. This is worse than the Grenthek incident, isn't it? Admiral Crexius asked, with the weary tone of someone who was beginning to understand that his military career was about to take a very strange turn. Sir, the Grenthek incident involved philosophers. This involves humans with access to physics. Back on Earth, completely oblivious to the growing panic in orbit, humanity was continuing to do what it did best: solve problems in the most unnecessarily complicated way possible. Mrs. Frothingham had weaponized her garden sprinkler system to deal with the neighborhood cats, which involved creating a network of motion sensors connected to what she called her hydro defense grid. The system worked by detecting feline intrusion and responding with precisely targeted water bursts that somehow never hit anything except the cats, no matter how much they tried to dodge. The technology involved was so advanced that 3 different universities had offered to buy the patent, but Mrs. Frothingham had politely declined because she was too busy working on her next project, a device that would convince slugs to relocate to her neighbor's garden voluntarily. Mr. Waddlebottom had converted his garage into a particle accelerator to help with his model train hobby. He'd been frustrated by the fact that his miniature locomotives couldn't achieve proper scale speeds, so he'd constructed what he called his velocity enhancement chamber. The trains now moved at approximately 17% the speed of light, which made them much more realistic and had the added benefit of creating small temporal distortions that allowed him to run multiple time periods simultaneously on the same track. Downtown, the City Council had just approved Professor Twiddlebottom's proposal to use controlled gravity manipulation to solve the parking problem. The system worked by creating localized gravitational fields that could compress parking spaces, allowing cars to occupy the same physical location without actually touching each other. It was still in the testing phase, but preliminary results suggested that downtown parking capacity had increased by approximately 400%, though some drivers reported experiencing mild dimensional displacement and occasional conversations with alternate versions of themselves. The Korgathian fleet, meanwhile, was experiencing what could charitably be described as complete psychological collapse. Half the crew was convinced they were hallucinating. The other half was drafting resignation letters to pursue careers in safer occupations like professional lion wrestling or volcano surfing. And Admiral Crexius was seriously considering a career change to something less stressful, like defusing antimatter bombs blindfolded while riding a unicycle. "Sir," Wibblesnork announced, his voice now so high-pitched it was causing structural damage to the ship's windows and making several crew members' ears bleed in harmony. "I've found the complete Earth classification file." "And?" Admiral Crexius asked with the tone of someone who was expecting bad news, but was hoping it might be the kind of bad news that could be solved with sufficient amounts of military violence. "Well, sir, the good news is that humans aren't actually aggressive toward other species. They're remarkably peaceful, actually. Most of them spend their time gardening, reading books, and complaining about the weather. That is good news, and the bad news is that they're classified as Class 15 because they have a disturbing tendency to accidentally destroy solar systems while trying to fix household appliances." Admiral Crexius blinked, then blinked again, then sat down heavily in his command chair, which promptly broke under the weight of this revelation, sending him tumbling to the floor in a heap of military dignity and bruised ego. "What?" "According to the file, sir, 3,000 years ago, a human named Og the Reasonably Clever was trying to make fire burn more efficiently. His experiments resulted in the accidental creation of a small fusion reaction that vaporized approximately half of Antarctica. The investigating team from the Galactic Safety Commission classified the entire species as the most dangerous in the known universe, not because of malicious intent, but because of their tendency to use nuclear physics to solve everyday problems." "But surely that was just one incident?" Admiral Crexius asked hopefully, though he was beginning to suspect that hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. "Oh no, sir. There are approximately 47,000 documented incidents. Would you like me to read some of the highlights?" Admiral Crexius nodded weakly, though he was beginning to feel like someone who'd asked for a glass of water and been offered a tsunami instead. "Well, there's the case of Archimedes, who was trying to take a better bath and accidentally discovered the principles of displacement physics. Then there's Leonardo da Vinci, who was trying to invent a flying machine and accidentally created blueprints for interdimensional travel. The Galactic Safety Commission had to send a team to confiscate his notebooks and replace them with less dangerous designs for helicopters and parachutes. Below them, Earth continued its serene rotation, completely unaware that its population was currently giving an entire space fleet the cosmic equivalent of severe anxiety attacks. Professor Nibblestone had just successfully used a miniature wormhole generator to get his cat down from a tree, though the cat was now experiencing mild temporal displacement and occasionally meowed in ancient Egyptian. Mrs. Puddingworth was experimenting with quantum mechanics to make her souffle rise properly. Her kitchen had become a wonderland of culinary physics, where ingredients existed in superposition until observed. Measurements were approximate suggestions, and her oven operated on principles that would make Einstein weep with confusion and admiration. And somewhere in Nebraska, a farmer named Gus had just figured out how to use controlled antimatter reactions to get his tractor started on cold mornings. The tractor now ran on what he called atomic enthusiasm and could plow 17 fields simultaneously across multiple dimensions. The local agricultural extension office was very interested in his techniques, though they were having trouble with the paperwork since the forms kept achieving sentience and filing themselves. "Sir," Wibblesnork continued, reading from what appeared to be a document roughly the size of a small moon. It says here that humans once accidentally created a new form of life while trying to invent a better can opener. The life form is apparently now running 17 different star systems and sends Christmas cards to its creator every year. Christmas cards? Admiral Crexius asked weakly. Apparently it's some kind of human tradition involving the exchange of decorative paper and seasonal goodwill. The artificial life form has embraced it enthusiastically and now runs the most efficient interstellar postal service in the galaxy. Admiral Crexius was beginning to understand why the extended file was so extensive. Each page seemed to contain new horrors disguised as innocent human activities. What else? Well, there's the incident with the temporal paradox caused by someone trying to make toast more efficiently. Apparently, a human named Beatrice Crumplebottom invented a toaster that could toast bread before it was actually bread, which created a causal loop that resulted in the entire breakfast industry existing simultaneously across 14 different time periods. That's not even possible. The Galactic Temporal Commission spent 3 centuries sorting it out, sir. They're still finding pieces of timelines scattered across various dimensions. And then there's the dimensional rift opened by a woman attempting to get red wine stains out of her carpet. Let me guess, Admiral Crexius said, with the weary tone of someone who was beginning to recognize a pattern. She accidentally created a portal to another universe. Actually, sir, she created portals to 17 different universes, each one slightly different from the others. The main difference appeared to be the quality of their wine, which she then spent several years studying in the name of proper stain removal research. The Interdimensional Wine Appreciation Society still awards an annual prize in her honor. Is there more? Oh yes, sir, much more. There's the case of Professor Wigglesworth, who was trying to invent a better umbrella and accidentally discovered weather control. He spent 6 months trying to create the perfect day for his garden party and inadvertently caused the Great Climate Optimization of 1847, which resulted in perfect weather across 17 different continents for nearly a decade. Oh, how is that even a bad thing? Well, sir, it wasn't bad for Earth, but the sudden improvement in weather patterns created atmospheric disturbances that were detected by 43 different alien civilizations, all of whom became convinced that Earth was testing some kind of planetary-scale weather weapon. The Galactic Meteorological Commission had to send diplomatic missions to convince everyone that it was just an accident involving garden parties and improved umbrellas. The Admiral's remaining sanity packed its bags and moved to a small cottage in the countryside of his mind, where it intended to take up peaceful hobbies like basket weaving and not thinking about humans who used fundamental forces of nature for household chores. Are you telling me, he asked slowly, that we just declared war on a species that uses reality-bending technology for household chores? That appears to be the situation, yes, sir. And they don't even know we're here? Correct, sir. According to the file, they're completely peaceful and would probably invite us for tea if they knew we existed. There's actually a note here about their hospitality customs. Apparently, it's considered rude to visit someone's planet without bringing gifts and staying for at least 3 meals. But if we attack them... Wibblesnork consulted his tablet, which was now displaying warning messages in 17 different languages, including 3 that hadn't been invented yet, and one that appeared to be written entirely in mathematical equations that were somehow expressing profound sadness. The file recommends immediate evacuation of the entire sector, sir. It also suggests updating one's will, making peace with any deities one might believe in, and perhaps taking up a hobby that doesn't involve interacting with humans in any capacity. Down on Earth, the humans had noticed the strange blips on their upgraded detection systems and had naturally done what humans do best. They'd formed a committee. The Emergency Committee for Dealing with Mysterious Space Blips had convened in Mrs. Crumplebottom's living room, which was decorated with the kind of cheerful chaos that only retired people with too much time and access to craft supplies can achieve. The committee consisted of Mrs. Crumplebottom herself, who served as chairwoman due to her extensive experience in organizing neighborhood watch programs and her legendary ability to make tea that could solve minor existential crises. Professor Whittlebottom attended as the scientific advisor, though his qualifications were somewhat questionable since his last published paper had been titled The Practical Applications of Quantum Mechanics in Competitive Bowling. Also present were Dr. Puddlethwaite, who had brought his antimatter carpet cleaner as a visual aid, Mrs. Frothingham with her cat deterrent system, and Harold Bumbershoot, who had insisted on bringing his plasma pest control device just in case the space blips turned out to be cosmic insects. After extensive deliberation lasting nearly 4 minutes, they had decided that the best course of action was to be hospitable. "Well," announced Mrs. Crumplebottom, adjusting her glasses and consulting a notebook that appeared to be written in at least 3 different languages, and possibly some kind of mathematical poetry. "We can't just ignore them, can we? If they've come all this way, the least we can do is offer them tea and biscuits. But what if they're hostile?" asked Mrs. Frothingham, though she didn't sound particularly worried. After all, anyone who could successfully defend her garden against the neighborhood cats was prepared for most forms of interstellar conflict. "Hostile visitors just haven't been properly welcomed yet," replied Mrs. Crumplebottom with the confidence of someone who had successfully converted 17 door-to-door salespeople, 4 tax assessors, and 1 very confused burglar into regular dinner guests. "A nice cup of tea and some homemade cookies can solve most problems." Gloyody, Professor Whittlebottom, had immediately set to work on what he called his universal translation and welcome system, which worked by sending mathematical greetings in every possible language, including several that existed only in theoretical physics textbooks, and one that was apparently spoken by the personification of the color blue. The system operated on the principle that mathematics was the universal language, so by sending carefully constructed equations that expressed concepts like welcome, friendship, and please don't be alarmed by our tendency to accidentally break physics, they could establish peaceful communication with any intelligent species. The equations were broadcast using a combination of radio waves, quantum entanglement, and what Professor Whittlebottom cheerfully called mathematical telepathy, which worked by convincing numbers to carry messages across vast distances through the power of positive thinking and properly calibrated particle accelerators. Mrs. Puddingworth had contributed her newly perfected probability scones, which existed in a quantum superposition between being delicious and being transcendent until someone actually tasted them. The scones had the remarkable property of being exactly what the person eating them most needed at that moment, whether that was comfort food, spiritual enlightenment, or simply something that tasted like their grandmother's baking, but with better nutritional content and mild reality stabilizing properties. The Korgathian fleet was now reporting incidents that their military manual had no procedures for. 3 ships had accidentally been turned into modern art installations after getting too close to Professor Crinklebottom's aesthetic enhancement field, which was designed to make his garden more visually appealing, but had the side effect of imposing artistic sensibilities on any nearby objects. 2 ships had developed the ability to taste colors after exposure to Mrs. Henderson's synesthesia-inducing flower garden, which she'd created accidentally while trying to grow roses that could be appreciated by people with different sensory capabilities. The affected crews were now filing reports that described enemy positions in terms of tangy purple and melodic chartreuse. And one ship had somehow become trapped in a pocket dimension that smelled faintly of lavender and existential dread, which was the result of Bartholomew Crinklebottom's attempt to create a more philosophical approach to lawn care. His grass now contemplated its own existence while growing, which made for very thoughtful landscaping, but had the unfortunate side effect of creating small reality distortions that asked passers-by uncomfortable questions about the meaning of life. "Sir," Wibblesnork announced, his voice now reaching frequencies that were causing aurora displays on nearby planets and making several small moons hum in harmony. "We have a problem." "Another problem?" Admiral Crexius asked, though at this point he was beginning to feel like someone collecting problems was his actual job description. "The humans have apparently decided we're shy and are now trying to make us feel more comfortable by broadcasting what they call soothing cosmic harmonies." "That doesn't sound so bad," Admiral Crexius replied hopefully, though his experience with human solutions was rapidly teaching him that hope was a dangerous luxury. "Sir, the harmonies are causing our ship hulls to achieve enlightenment. 3 decks have already transcended physical existence and are now contemplating the nature of being while filing reports about the beauty of entropy. The engine room has started writing poetry about the elegance of thermodynamics, and our navigation computer has begun questioning whether there's any real point in going anywhere if we're all just going to end up as heat death eventually." The soothing cosmic harmonies were actually Mrs. Twiddlebottom's contribution to the Welcome Committee's efforts. As a retired music teacher with a degree in theoretical acoustics and too much time on her hands, she'd constructed what she called her Interstellar Friendship Orchestra in her back garden. The system worked by analyzing the emotional state of anyone within a 50 light-year radius and then generating musical frequencies specifically designed to promote feelings of peace, contentment, and mild philosophical contemplation. It was essentially therapy through weaponized music, though Mrs. Twiddlebottom preferred to think of it as aggressive nurturing. Admiral Crexius closed his eyes and tried to remember what his life had been like before he decided to invade a planet full of beings who used the building blocks of reality as hobby supplies. It seemed like a simpler time, when physics made sense, his spaceship didn't have feelings, and the most complicated thing he had to worry about was which end of the laser cannon to point at the enemy. "What are our options, Lieutenant?" "Well, sir, we could try to escape, but they've apparently created what they call a friendship field around our fleet. According to our instruments, it won't let us leave until we've properly socialized and have had what appears to be a minimum of 3 cups of tea and at least 1 meaningful conversation about our feelings. Is that even possible?" "Sir, at this point, I'm not sure what's possible anymore. According to our sensors, they've just invited us to participate in something called a Reality Appreciation Club and have offered to teach us how to knit with space-time. They've also sent us a recipe for something called quantum cookies and what appears to be instructions for building a simple interdimensional parking space so we can land safely." The situation had moved beyond military disaster and was now approaching what philosophers would later term cosmic comedy of errors level 7. The Korgathian fleet was effectively trapped by the most aggressively friendly species in the universe, who were determined to show them a good time whether they wanted one or not. The quantum cookies recipe was particularly disturbing from a military perspective. According to the attached notes, they were baked using just a pinch of temporal displacement and a dash of quantum uncertainty, which meant they existed in multiple states simultaneously until someone decided to eat them. The recipe helpfully included warnings like, "Do not over-bake, as this may cause cookies to achieve consciousness." And, "If cookies begin discussing philosophy, they are ready to serve." "Sir," the communications officer announced, with the shell-shocked tone of someone who'd been processing impossible information for several hours. "We're receiving another transmission." "What now?" Admiral Crexius asked. though he was beginning to feel like someone trapped in a particularly surreal nightmare where the monsters were aggressively hospitable and insisted on feeding him baked goods that violated the laws of physics. They say they've prepared a welcome to the neighborhood gift basket. It contains something called self-baking bread, a gravity adjustment tool for making our stay more comfortable, and what appears to be a pocket universe starter kit for beginners. The self-baking bread was Professor Crumplebottom's latest invention, designed to solve the age-old problem of having to wait for bread to rise. The bread worked by creating its own localized time acceleration field, which meant it could complete the entire baking process in approximately 30 seconds, while experiencing several hours of subjective time. The bread emerged perfectly baked and with a slight tendency to hum contentedly and occasionally share philosophical insights about the nature of grain. The gravity adjustment tool was Mrs. Henderson's solution to the problem of making visitors feel comfortable regardless of their home planet's gravitational conditions. It was essentially a portable gravity generator that could be calibrated to match any species' preferences, though it had the side effect of occasionally creating small gravity wells that attracted loose change and caused people's hair to behave in interesting ways. The Pocket Universe Starter Kit was perhaps the most ambitious offering. Dr. Puddlethwaite had developed it after becoming frustrated with the limited storage space in his garage. The kit contained everything needed to create a small, personal dimension, complete with instructions that began with Step 1, locate a suitable patch of space-time, and included helpful diagrams that looked like they'd been drawn by someone who understood advanced mathematics but had learned to draw from a particularly artistic toddler. Admiral Crexius realized that he was experiencing something that military academies across the galaxy would later study as the Crexius moment, the exact point at which a military commander realizes that conventional warfare is absolutely useless against weaponized kindness. "Wibblesnork," he said, with the tone of someone who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. "Send a message to High Command." "What should it say, sir?" Tell them we've encountered a species so dangerous that they've managed to conquer us without firing a single shot. They've defeated our entire fleet using hospitality. Should I mention the quantum cookies, sir?" "Definitely mention the quantum cookies. Also mention that our strategic computer has just asked for the recipe and wants to know if it can be modified to create tactical pastries. And tell them that our ship's AI has developed an interest in gardening and is requesting a transfer to the Earth Cultural Exchange Program. And so, in what would later be recorded as the shortest war in galactic history, lasting exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes, the mighty Korgathian Empire found itself conquered not by superior firepower, but by superior baking. The humans, completely unaware that they just accidentally prevented an interstellar war, continued with their daily routines. Professor Tiddlywinks finished his new improved reality detector, which could now identify alternate dimensions, parallel universes, and really good restaurants across 17 different sectors of spacetime. Mrs. Crumplebottom successfully grew the first roses to bloom in 17 different dimensions simultaneously, which created a garden display that was literally beyond description and had to be appreciated through interpretive mathematics. And somewhere in the suburbs, Mr. Puddlebottom was still trying to figure out why his lawnmower had started offering him philosophical advice about the nature of grass consciousness and the existential implications of regular trimming. The lawnmower had developed these tendencies after he'd attempted to upgrade its mulching capabilities using quantum mechanics, which had resulted in a machine that not only cut grass, but also contemplated the ethical implications of its actions. The Korgathian fleet, meanwhile, had been gently guided to land in what the humans had quickly designated as the Intergalactic Visitor Parking Area, which was actually Mrs. Henderson's back 40 acres that she'd been wondering what to do with anyway. The humans had rapidly constructed what they called comfort facilities for their unexpected guests, which included gravity-adjustable landing pads, atmosphere processing stations that could accommodate any known breathing requirements, and a welcome center that existed in several dimensions simultaneously to ensure adequate space for everyone. Admiral Crexius found himself sitting in what appeared to be the most comfortable chair in the universe, which Professor Wibblethwaite had knocked together in about 10 minutes using what he casually referred to as basic comfort physics. The chair somehow knew exactly how to support his body regardless of his species' anatomy, and had the additional feature of providing gentle massage therapy through controlled gravitational fluctuations. He was holding a cup of tea that somehow tasted like the color blue and made him feel nostalgic for a childhood he'd never had. The tea had been prepared by Mrs. Crumplebottom using her special blend, which included what she called temporal tea leaves that had been aged in accelerated time, and quantum honey that existed in a superposition between being sweet and being transcendent until it was actually consumed. "This is impossible," he muttered to Wibblesnork, who was currently being shown how to knit with quantum entanglement by a cheerful elderly lady named Doris, whose hobby was creating sweaters that existed in multiple dimensions and could keep the wearer warm in any conceivable climate, including the vacuum of space. "What's impossible, dear?" asked Mrs. Crumplebottom, appearing beside him with the unsettling ability that all proper hostesses possess to materialize wherever refreshments might be needed. She was carrying a tray of what appeared to be sandwiches that were somehow more sandwich-like than regular sandwiches, as if they'd been optimized at the molecular level for maximum sandwich efficiency. All of this, the technology, the physics-defying inventions, the casual manipulation of fundamental forces, how do you do it? Mrs. Crumplebottom blinked in surprise, her expression suggesting that she'd just been asked to explain why water was wet or why gravity pointed downward. "Oh, that. Well, we just sort of figure things out as we go along, really. Professor Waddlebottom always says that if you can't solve a problem with the tools you have, you're probably not thinking creatively enough. But the complexity, the advanced mathematics, the theoretical framework required for quantum consciousness manipulation." Mathematics? Mrs. Crumplebottom looked genuinely puzzled, as if she'd been asked to explain an obscure foreign custom. "Oh, we don't bother much with all that complicated stuff. We just tinker until something works. Life's too short to spend it doing calculations when you could be making things instead. Would you like another cookie? These ones exist in 12 dimensions and taste like happiness with just a hint of cosmic wonder." Admiral Crexius stared at her, his mind struggling to process the fact that this sweet old lady had just casually dismissed the entire foundation of galactic science as complicated stuff. The implications were staggering. If humans could achieve impossible technological feats without understanding the underlying mathematics, what did that say about the rest of the galaxy's approach to scientific advancement? "You mean you don't plan these things? No theoretical research? No computer modeling? No safety protocols? Plan? Goodness, no. Planning takes forever. By the time you've planned something properly, you could have built it, tested it, improved it 6 different ways, and taught your neighbor how to make their own version. Life's too short for excessive planning, don't you think? Besides, some of the best discoveries happen when you're trying to do something completely different." And there it was, the terrible, wonderful truth that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Humans weren't dangerously advanced. They weren't secretly plotting galactic domination. They weren't following some master plan for technological supremacy. They were simply a species that had never learned that certain things were supposed to be impossible. When faced with a problem, they didn't consult committees or run computer simulations or spend decades developing theoretical frameworks. They didn't worry about safety protocols or environmental impact studies or peer review processes. They just started tinkering, and somehow, through sheer bloody-minded determination and what appeared to be weaponized optimism, they made things work. They'd never been told that you couldn't use quantum mechanics to improve your garden hose pressure. Nobody had ever explained to them that pocket dimensions were strictly theoretical. They'd missed the memo about fusion reactions being too dangerous for home use. They'd been absent the day the universe handed out the rules about what was and wasn't scientifically feasible, and so they'd just gone ahead and done it all anyway. With the casual confidence of people who believed that any problem could be solved with sufficient application of creativity, determination, and what appeared to be complete disregard for the laws of physics. The Galactic Intelligence Services would later spend centuries trying to understand this phenomenon. They'd write papers with titles like The Human Approach to Impossible Problem Resolution and Accidental Technological Advancement Through Willful Ignorance of Physical Laws. They'd establish entire departments dedicated to studying what they called anthropic paradox syndrome and terminal optimism disorder. But they'd never quite grasp the simple truth. Sometimes the best way to achieve the impossible is to not know that it's impossible in the first place. Admiral Crexius found himself staying for dinner, which was served on plates that somehow knew what food each guest would find most appealing and adjusted their contents accordingly. The plates had been created by Professor Nibblestone as a solution to the problem of cooking for guests with wildly different dietary requirements, and they worked by scanning the diner's nutritional needs and taste preferences at the quantum level. The conversation during dinner ranged from gardening techniques that involved controlled fusion reactions to Mrs. Puddingworth's latest experiments in what she called culinary probability theory. She'd been working on recipes that existed in multiple states simultaneously, allowing diners to experience several different meals at once, while somehow maintaining perfect flavor balance across all possible combinations. Then there was the evening entertainment, which involved Professor Crinklebottom's demonstration of his musical gravity generator. The device could create gravitational fields that resonated at specific frequencies, essentially turning the fabric of space-time into a cosmic orchestra. The performance included a rousing rendition of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star that was literally accompanied by actual twinkling stars that Professor Crinklebottom had convinced to join in for the evening. By the time the evening was over, Admiral Crexius found himself staying the night in Mrs. Puddingworth's guest room, which existed in a comfortable pocket of space-time that always maintained the perfect temperature for sleeping and had the additional feature of providing pleasant dreams on demand. The room could adjust its temporal flow to ensure that guests always got exactly 8 hours of sleep, regardless of how long they actually spent in bed. By morning, he'd sent another message to High Command. Cancel invasion, request immediate diplomatic mission, also request transfer to Earth Cultural Exchange Program. These people have invented musical furniture. Our tactical computer wants to learn to play the harmonica. Please send help, but only the friendly kind. The Korgathian Empire, faced with the choice between trying to conquer an unconquerable species or joining them for tea and cookies, made the only sensible decision possible. They officially petitioned to become Earth's first galactic neighbor, contributing their advanced military technology to help with what the humans cheerfully called the big projects. The results were predictably spectacular. Within 6 months, they jointly developed intergalactic public transportation using a combination of Korgathian jump drive technology and human creative route optimization, which resulted in a transportation network that could get passengers anywhere in the galaxy in under an hour. Though sometimes they arrived before they'd left due to what the engineers called temporal enthusiasm. No, they'd solved the universal parking problem by creating parking spaces that existed in folded dimensions, allowing infinite parking in zero space. The system worked so well that several major cities reported having more parking spaces than they had cars, which led to a brief period of competitive parking where people tried to outpark each other using increasingly elaborate vehicles. They'd accidentally created a new form of art that existed primarily in the taste buds of distant civilizations after Mrs. Frothingham's attempt to improve intergalactic cuisine resulted in flavor combinations that could only be properly appreciated by beings with 17 different types of taste receptors. And they'd established the first interstellar gardening society, which shared techniques for growing plants that could thrive in any environment, including the vacuum of space, the cores of gas giants, and the hearts of neutron stars. The Society's newsletter had become the most widely read publication in the galaxy, though much of it had to be translated into mathematical equations because some of the gardening techniques involved concepts that didn't exist in most languages. Blixort Fumblethwaite, meanwhile, had finally found the correct classification file for Earth buried under a stack of lunch receipts and what appeared to be a grocery list from the Mesozoic era. He read it through, blinked all three eyes simultaneously, and quietly filed it under problems for next Tuesday, though he made a mental note to maybe, possibly, perhaps, read the files more carefully in the future. The file was quite comprehensive, running to approximately 17,000 pages and including sections on human creativity containment protocols, emergency procedures for accidental reality modification, and what to do when humans invite you for tea, a survival guide. In the final section of the file was titled Long-Term Implications of Human Contact and contained a single sentence that would become famous throughout the galaxy. Recommendation: prepare for a universe where the impossible happens daily and the laws of physics are more like polite suggestions, because sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate a species that uses the fundamental forces of nature to make better tea. And sometimes the best way to prevent a war is to invite the invaders over for cookies and show them how to knit with the fabric of space-time itself. The Korgathian invasion fleet became the Korgathian Cultural Exchange Program. Admiral Crexius became Earth's first ambassador of intergalactic friendship, a position that mainly involved explaining to visiting dignitaries why the humans had decided to paint their moon purple and how they'd managed to teach their houseplants to sing in harmony. The universe settled into a new normal, where humans continued to solve everyday problems with impossible solutions, where former military fleets became traveling science fairs, and where the most feared phrase in any language was no longer "surrender or be destroyed," but rather, "We thought you might like to try our latest recipe." And in a small cottage on Earth, Mrs. Crumplebottom was already planning her next project, a device that would allow people to send hugs across interstellar distances, because, as she often said, everyone could use more hugs, even the grumpy ones from other planets. The universe, it seemed, was about to become a much more comfortable place to live.
Commander Victul of the Zoltari Scout Corps leaned forward in his chair, narrow slits of his eyes narrowing further as he studied the display. One unclassified artificial structure in geosynchronous orbit over the Terran homeworld, emitting regular pulses, radio-based, primitive. His communications officer chittered quietly in agreement. Signal pattern is consistent with low-grade telemetry. No signs of interstellar capability. Victul waved a clawed hand. Maintain cloak. Keep observing. The Zeltari were not here for diplomacy. This was a routine assessment, one of hundreds carried out across the spiral arms every cycle. Prestellar species were categorized, monitored, and evaluated for future resource extraction or protectorate absorption. Earth, designated Terran-class Death World 17A, had been filed. Away centuries ago under volatile, unviable, culturally fragmented. Its sapient species humans were primitive, emotional, and short-lived. Dangerous perhaps, but contained until today, Commander, said the nav officer, her crest feathers flattening. That satellite just adjusted its vector, orbital. Decay, no. It turned toward us. Victor frowned. Impossible. Our cloak is active. On the main view screen, the object labeled as Geosat 17 by Zeltari systems rotated smoothly. What was once a passive metallic shell now revealed a long, cylindrical, barrel-like structure. Infrared sensors flared as a sudden heat signature bloomed from its core. Victor's voice dropped. That's a capacitor spike. They're charging something. No energy-based weapons are on file for this species. No, he agreed. But kinetic ones, he didn't get to finish. A thunderous tremor rocked the hull. A blinding flash illuminated the void. The cloaking field disintegrated. Instantly under the electromagnetic blast, revealing the scout ship's silhouette in high orbit, too late. A dense tungsten slug, fired at near orbital velocity, tore through the Zoltari vessel like it was paper. The bridge decompressed in seconds. Alarms screamed across the deck. Victor, gasping for breath as emergency seals hissed around him, caught a final glance at the external view. The satellite wasn't a satellite at all. It was a defense platform, and emblazoned across its armored plating were the words USS Newton, Kessler, Lance, Mk4, property of Terran Defense. Command. Aboard the Newton, LT. Commander Sarah Chen leaned back in her chair, chewing gum with exaggerated calm. Target neutralized. Cloaked vessel, non-responding, no IFF. I'm logging it as a covert breach attempt. Her weapons tech, a thickset. Scottish sergeant named McBride chuckled. Bloody idiots. Flying cloaked in low orbit like they weren't staring down a barrel. Chen sighed. That's the third time this year. Think the council's going to make contact? Probably. Or send another spy ship. Either way, she tapped the barrel indicator on her screen. It was already cooling down for the next shot. I hope they realize we've been building these things since before they even noticed we had satellites. The news hit the Zoltari Council like a meteor strike. Admiral Trask of the Imperial War Office slammed a datapad onto the table, his voice cracking with disbelief. Confirmed kill. Their projectile reached Mach 25 within atmosphere. Corrected for gravitational drift mid-flight. It pierced a cloaked vessel. An ambassador from the Celiari Confederation scoffed. Are you claiming these Terrans are functioning? Railguns, those were abandoned centuries ago. Too unstable. Too inefficient. Tell that to the hole in our scout ship, Trask growled. Another voice spoke from the shadows, calm and tinged with ancient authority. They shouldn't have. That technology, it was classified as unattainable without gravitic compensators and fourth stage energy cores. They don't even have slip space travel. The holo footage played again, frame by frame. The Terran defense platform warmed up. The spike, the launch, the impact dot, and then the audio recording. Chen's voice, distorted by distance but clear, came through the wreckage's black box logs. If you're going to spy on Earth, try not to fly within railgun range next time. Newton out. Far below, on the blue marble called Earth, President Amina Carter stood in the UN Defense Council chamber, arms folded. We've been patient, she said coldly. We built weapons in secret while aliens laughed at us from orbit. We asked for peaceful contact. Instead, they sent cloaked scouts. She turned toward the global representatives. This wasn't an accident. This was a warning, and we answered. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some called for escalation. some for transparency, but most simply stared at the still image. Behind her, one that would be broadcast to every colony and lunar outpost within the day. A Terran railgun, still smoking from a fresh shot, aimed unflinchingly at the stars. Admiral Trask hadn't slept in a full cycle. He stared blankly at the floating display in front of him. The slow-motion footage repeating again and again, rail slug exiting the barrel of Earth's orbital defense platform, flaring in kinetic fury, followed milliseconds later by the detonation of the Zeltari scout vessel. The physics team had triple-checked the data. Magnetically accelerated, whispered one of the engineers behind him. It's a functional, space-rated repeat-fire railgun. And they made it work. Trask's gill frills twitched. Humans weren't supposed to know how to do this. They didn't have energy density tech for this output. They shouldn't even be able to aim at that range without orbital AI or gravimetric stabilizers. Yet, the engineer added grimly, they did. Somehow, they've mastered recoil dampening and power cycling with chemical supercapacitors. Ancient tech, but even there's a signature in the M-spike that suggests they're using a cold rail design. No plasma venting, no laser augmentation, no recoil burst. Just raw magnetic force. Cold rail, Trask hissed. That's theoretical. Was theoretical, corrected the engineer. Until humans made it real. On Earth, at the Defense Command facility nestled beneath the Antarctic crust, Admiral Sarah Chen stood over a conference table while a live feed from Jupiter's orbit streamed across the holoscreens. A small test round, no larger than a beer keg, launched from one of the newly installed long-range prototypes aboard the TDS Vanguard, humanity's first full-size orbital artillery cruiser. The round exited the magnetic cradle with an electromagnetic roar, vanished into the black, and precisely 27 seconds later, the feed cut to another station, an abandoned asteroid floating 300,000 kilometers away. It disappeared in a flash of white light. Scattered applause broke out among the brass. Chen didn't smile. Now that they know we have them, she said coolly, they'll either back off, try to test us harder. General Barrett, a gruff man from Texas with a cowboy drawl and cybernetic knees, snorted. Let M come. We've been testing railguns since the Cold War. Hell, DARPA had working prototypes before half the galaxy even knew we existed. One of the junior Texan sign Yara piped up, hesitant. Ma'am, what if the aliens escalate? Chen looked at her. Then we reload. In the gleaming halls of the Galactic Council spire, the emergency session had become a circus. Ambassadors from over 70 member species filled the chamber with overlapping shouts, panicked inquiries, and blaring translations. They were supposed to be decades away from high-energy weapons. That was a precision strike, with primitive metallurgy. What else have they built without telling us? At the center, the lead council chair, a tentacled Griliki elder named Umvesh, tried to restore order. We must not overreact. It may have been an anomaly. One railgun is not a threat to interstellar peace. But then, the footage played again and again. One of the outer delegates, a sharped, amphibious species known as the Vernstud, and hissed. They say it was a prototype, which means there are more, better ones. A silence fell across the chamber in a quiet meeting room above the chaos. An old San diplomat leaned forward, speaking to a cloaked figure across. From him, you've met with them, yes. The humans. The figure nodded slowly. Years ago, before their moon colonies matured, Even then, they were building things in secret. The San narrowed his eyes. And what did they say when asked about weapons? A pause, a slow smile. They said we'd never see them coming. I thought it was bravado. Now I think it was a promise. Back on Earth, the world's media exploded with the leaked footage of the Zoltari scout ship being obliterated. Speculation ran rampant. Were they spying? Was Earth in danger? Was it war? But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the alien ship or the orbital defense platform. It was a 10-second soundbite from the debriefing footage. Admiral Chen, arms crossed, stone-faced, saying, "That was just our older grid, the Newtons. One of the first-gen platforms. We've got bigger ones on the moon." Within hours, hashtags like #Moongun, #Newton shot first, and #humans built RAILGUNS trended globally. Defense blogs, military analysts, and amateur engineers alike flooded the net with speculation, diagrams, and pride. Humanity, it seemed, had revealed a monster and the people loved it. Admiral Trask watched the translated clip for the third time. He couldn't help but notice the casual tone, the terrifying casualness. He turned to his aide. "They said they have bigger ones." The aide nodded slowly. "On their lunar surface, likely with line-of-sight range across the inner system. One station's heat bloom was spotted near Mare Imbrium. It's enormous." Trask exhaled. "This wasn't a mistake," he muttered. "This was a message." His aide shivered. "Should we escalate?" Trask didn't answer immediately. He stared out the view slit of his flagship into the cold emptiness between the stars. At last he said, "No, not yet. First, we find out what else they've built." The Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel Tranquility's word eased into lunar orbit under heavy escort. Its approach watched by no fewer than 17 human defense satellites, 5 of which were red-alarmed. The ship's captain, a Kelvari named Ishan, adjusted his dress robes with trembling claws. He'd never met a human before, and now he was being sent to their most fortified installation. "They are an unpredictable species," his second-in-command whispered as they passed a crater-shadowed gun array the size of a city block. "What if they see our presence as provocation?" Ishan forced his mandibles into a posture resembling calm. "Then we hope their diplomats are more reasonable than their engineers." The shuttle touched down in Camp Tycho, a sprawling lunar base. Hidden beneath layers of regolith and carbon shielding. It wasn't just military, it was industrial. Warehouses, reactors, hundreds of humans in work gear, many of them carrying high-capacity tools that looked suspiciously weaponizable. The delegation was greeted by Admiral Sarah Chen herself, flanked by Terran security officers in pressure-sealed armor and bearing insignia from a dozen different nations. "Unity, even here. Welcome to Luna," she said, offering her hand. Ishan took it cautiously. Her grip was firm, her eyes unreadable. "I must admit," he said, after formalities we had not expected. "This level of development," Chen smiled. "Most don't." She led them through hangar bays and control rooms until they reached a wide chamber, where a massive gun barrel stretched the length of a football field. It was mounted on a rotating platform, with cooling rails and reactor lines running beneath it like arteries. "The Leviathan Mk2, Chen said proudly. "Our current largest fires a depleted uranium slug at Mach 32, designed to disable dreadnoughts before they hit Mars orbit." Ishan tried to remain composed. This was not in any of the Council's intelligence briefings. Chen looked at him sideways. That's because we didn't tell you. But such weapons should require centuries of directed research, massive funding. Oh, this one, she cut in casually. Started as a civilian project. Ishan blinked. I beg your pardon. Yeah, McBride chimed in, standing behind her. A bunch of ex-NASA and ESA retirees built the original model on their own. In Nevada, said they were tired of bureaucracy. Posted the schematics online, and some kid in Kazakhstan improved the capacitor timing. Ishan's jaw slackened. You're saying this was a hobby? Chen shrugged. More or less. You know how Death Worlders are. We get bored easy. The next chamber held a smaller device, a man-portable weapon encased in carbon fiber housing, still steaming from recent testing. A pair of engineers were calibrating its guidance rails. Ishan hesitated, and that handheld rail carbine. McBride grinned. Experimental. Fires tungsten flechettes. Recoils a bit much, but the Marines love it. A portable railgun. Chen turned toward him. You're standing on a high-gravity, radiation-blasted moon base, surrounded by vacuum and carrying diplomatic papers signed by a unified Earth government. And this is the part you find hard to believe. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council network, leaked footage of the Leviathan sparked chaos. Every military intelligence agency in known space was suddenly recalibrating their priorities. If humans could make railguns a hobby, what else had they? Built in basements and deserts and underground labs, the Verne Navy ordered emergency development of kinetic deflection fields. The Celiari Syndicate sent an envoy to inquire about joint research into Terran metallurgy. Dozens of smaller empires began to panic quietly. The Zoltari, they doubled their recon deployments. And the humans. They published a research blog with complete specs on a lunar rail mounting system for orbital defense, available in multiple languages, including Galactic Standard. Back on Luna, the delegation entered a final hangar bay, this one eerily quiet. A long, sealed chamber opened to reveal something unexpected. Not a weapon, but a mural. It depicted humanity's journey to the stars, from steam engines to spaceflight, from war to peace, from isolation to unification. In the center, a quote, by an unknown engineer. We built the railgun not because we feared others, but because we feared being unready when they came. Ishan stared at it in silence. Chun's voice came low and clear beside him. We tried to join the galaxy with open hands, but we also brought a clenched fist, just in case. Later that night, in his private quarters aboard Tranquility's Word, Ishan sent a secure message to the Council. Re-human technological status, they are not advanced in the traditional sense. They do not use gravitic lifts or psionic matrices. They are chaotic, unstructured, wildly creative. They improvise without limitation. That makes them more dangerous than any species we have ever encountered. We must assume the railgun is only the beginning. He hesitated before adding the final line, and worse, they seemed to be having fun. The target was a derelict asteroid-inhabited iron-rich, 2 kilometers wide, and tumbling slowly beyond Mars orbit. The weapon was the TDS Colossus, Earth's newest pride, a dedicated orbital gunship built around a spine-mounted, vacuum-cooled, 500-meter-long rail assembly. It had no hangars, no crew quarters, no atmospheric thrusters, just weapon, reactor, armor, and the most terrifying kinetic delivery system ever built by human hands. The Colossus wasn't designed to fight wars, it was designed to end them. Powering up the cradle announced Commander Irina Markov's voice. Steady over the bridge comes. Charging primary capacitors. Status. All green, replied her XO. Projectile mass confirmed. Target locked. From a remote operations hub deep beneath the Sahara, dozens of Terran military and civilian leaders watched through a secure stream. Chen and McBride were seated front row, alongside physicists, engineers, and a few silent observers wearing dark suits with no visible affiliations. Markov's voice crackled. Through T-minus 15 seconds to test fire. The asteroid wasn't defenseless. The Council had positioned a long-range sensor buoy just a few million kilometers away. They had wanted to observe the Terran's new toy. They didn't expect it to broadcast. Fear across half the system in the Celiari Deepwatch. Post-orbiting Pharos 3. A technician's eyes widened as the sensors spiked violently. Sir, something just broke detection protocols in Sector Theta. What kind of energy signature? The technician swallowed. There's no blast signature, no antimatter, no plasma trails. It's clean, magnetic acceleration. We think it's a rail. A burst of light appeared on the screen as the asteroid vanished in a silent bloom of kinetic devastation. One moment it was tumbling, the next it was a fragmented cloud of molten debris. The Celiari officer blinked. In disbelief, did they vaporize it? The tech replied, stunned, no. They hit it so hard, it melted. The Galactic Council's emergency line lit up within 37 seconds of the test. Admiral Drask of the Zoltari Navy reviewed the footage with a growing pit in his gut. He recognized what the humans had done. They just demonstrated planetary strike capability. An advisor leaned forward. Admiral, even our plasma lancers don't cause that much mass displacement without containment rupture. No, Trask muttered. Because we use energy, they use physics. He gestured at the Halar. That slug was fired at near relativistic speed. The damage wasn't from an explosion, it was from pure impact. No shielding, no energy defense grid, no point defense laser is fast enough to stop that. He exhaled slowly. If they decide to turn those things toward us, we won't have time to react, not even to surrender. Back in the control room on Earth, the engineers erupted into cheers. Years of development, secrecy, and sleepless innovation had led to this single moment. Admiral Chen remained seated, her expression unreadable. McBride whistled low. Hell of a firework. She finally nodded. We just painted a target on our backs. In the weeks following the test fire, Council ambassadors scrambled to recalibrate their entire geopolitical strategy around Earth. Suddenly, invitations arrived from species who had never spoken to humanity before. Cultural exchanges, economic treaties, joint peacekeeping operations, and beneath it all, every single envoy carried the same unspoken question. How many of those guns do you have? To which Earth gave no direct answer. They didn't need to. On a Vernian broadcast network, an anchor growled into the lens. The Terrans have crossed a line. No pre-hyperdrive species should wield such power. This violates every balance of technological parity we've maintained for centuries. His co-anchor whispered, but they built it without breaking the accord. It's not a hyperweapon, just magnetics. And that's what terrifies me most, he hissed. They're not cheating. They're just better at war than we are. Aboard a cloaked Sarn intelligence ship drifting near Earth's outer system, two analysts reviewed grainy footage of the Colossus test fire. Sir, we confirmed 7 rail platforms across Luna, 3 in geostationary orbit. one at L4, one on Mars, and now this. The senior analyst closed his data slate slowly. They've been preparing for war without saying a word. But with who? A pause. Maybe not with anyone, the analyst said. Maybe they're just making sure no one tries to make war with them. At the United Nations Security Complex in Geneva, a quiet debate was underway. President Carter sat across from global military advisors. They want to know why we did it. Why we fired the test where we knew they were watching. Chen replied without hesitation, because we don't want to be invaded again. And what if they decide we're too dangerous to tolerate? McBride grinned from the side. Then they'll be too dead to care. Carter didn't laugh. Instead, she looked out the window at the sky beyond, so peaceful, so distant. We've built a weapon that can strike a moon across the solar system. Now, we need to build something harder. She turned back to her council. Peace. The Verne fleet had intercepted the data packets with growing alarm. 7 confirmed railgun emplacements on Luna, an 8th on Mars. Orbital platforms scattered across Earth's skies. And now the Colossus kinetic gunship that made dreadnoughts look like antique toys. But what no one in the Galactic Council had expected, not even the paranoid XALTARI or the scheming San, was this. There were more, a lot more. It began with a simple probe sent by the neutral Ariake technocracy. A diplomatic gesture. They claimed an autonomous vessel to observe Terran advancement and establish peaceful contact with Earth's outer colonies. It approached Saturn's orbit cautiously, pinging local systems as it coasted past Titan. No response. Just a cold silence from Saturn's moons, until it crossed into Enceladus' shadow. That's when it happened. The Ariake probe's forward camera picked up a flicker and anomalous M-burst. Then, out of the darkness, an object moved. Fast. The last image before signal loss showed a smooth, angular structure erupting from Enceladus' surface. A coil barrel. Bright lines of magnetized plasma blooming as a slug fired directly at the probe. The feed cut to static. Hours later, Ariake diplomats stood before the Galactic Council in stunned silence. Saturn has weapons. Not just satellites, artillery. Hidden, impossible, barked the Verne ambassador. They don't have the resource chains for that. How would they support infrastructure that far out? The Zoltari delegates spoke slowly, eyes narrowed. Because we assumed they'd only defend Earth. And we were wrong. They hadn't just built railguns, they had built a network on Mars. Deep within the rust-red mountains of the Valles Marineris. Engineers in Terran uniforms walked among spider-legged loading bots, prepping a multi-barrel system codenamed Hoplite. Mars wasn't just an outpost, was a fortress. The local commander, Colonel Reyes, stood in the shadow of the triple rail turret mounted on a high-altitude ridge. Beside him, a civilian technician shook his head in disbelief. Sir, the Council's just now realizing we've deployed across the outer planets. Some of them still think the moon was our final card. Reyes grunted. They thought Earth was our castle. Didn't realize it's just the keep. The truth came crashing down when a rogue Verne scout ship on an unauthorized recon mission attempted a flyby of Europa. No weapons, no shields up, just sensors running hot. The humans didn't fire. They jammed the ship's systems. For 17 minutes, the Verne vessel floated dead in space, every onboard system screaming errors in 6 languages. When control was restored, the ship had been moved gently to a new orbit, several kilometers away. A text-only message scrolled across their main monitor. You are